Well, welcome everyone. It's good to be back. We're here for another session of Build with Ben. And today we're here to talk about something that I'm really excited about, which is we're going to be actually looking into VitePress, which is the little brother of VuePress for those of you who might have used the static site generator that Evan built a while ago. Hey, how's it going, Thesis? Good to see you. And so, so basically we'll be taking a look at VitePress today, and more importantly, we're going to be live coding with it because for those of you who might have seen, we're actually working on a new iteration of the docs using VitePress. And so we're just doing some live coding using VitePress while also just sort of looking at the theming. And of course, as y'all have any questions regarding, whether it's coding or whatnot, please feel free to drop them in the chat and happy to answer them along the way. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, great. Okay, so as far as first, again, just to recap as far as VitePress, think of VuePress, which is a static site generator that really Evan sort of built one day that was basically a really clever project that relied solely on markdown files. And then within those, you could do basically you could use Vue components, you could you could define layouts and that thing using Vue, but all your content was managed via Markdown, which is really exciting. Hey, how's it going, Plan? Glad you liked the talk at Nux Nation. It was, other than the little bit of technical difficulty at the beginning, it was fun to get to talk to everyone about Notion and Nuxt. All right, so let's see. So as far as VitePress stuff goes, so basically we're taking the VuePress idea that we have of using markdown files to statically generate a site, and then taking that and using Vite, which is basically a think Webpack but for ESM. So basically ES modules, which is a new way of packaging JavaScript, and taking that and running that under the hood, which allows for performance optimizations as well as sort of feature enhancements, as I think VitePress starts to take a bit of the forefront. While VuePress, I think over time, we'll start to see not used as much, I think, especially as we talk about optimizing for performance and making sure that users get the fastest load possible. So with that said, basically, we're going to go ahead and take a look. Hey, how's it going, Voltron? We are going to go ahead and take a look at VitePress. Ooh, Thesis here with a stirring the teapot here. With modern-day search engines capable of indexing JavaScript apps and pages, I wonder, do we really need static site builders anymore? That's a great question. So I think, generally speaking, when it comes to loading JavaScript and having things crawled, I think SEO-wise, you're right that a lot of the bots these days have gotten a lot smarter regarding crawling. But I would say it's still one of those things where sometimes it's hard to know whether certain things will be crawled, right? Because it's still one of those, will it wait long enough that you fetch all your dynamic content from the APIs, right? So that in that regard, it is a little bit, I would say, unreliable SEO-wise, which is why I would say as time goes on, I think it's more of that hybrid approach where you want to try to front load as much as you can with statically generated apps and sites. Because if those things are very consistent, you want those things to be downloaded as quickly as possible. And there's really no reason for JavaScript to be responsible for doing the rendering if, say, for example, for this page, that the content is always going to be this. There's not really the benefit of having that as the JavaScript to go fetch that or to render that. So in that regard, I think static site generation still has its place when it comes to content that's consistent and that you want to sort of get to the user on first meaningful paint as possible. That said, obviously a lot more as apps, especially apps, grow more dynamic and we're using them for more and more websites to really create custom experiences for users. That's when I think you're going to have the JavaScript come in and kind of fill the void. And then, of course, hopefully the SEO still grabs all that stuff. So I think as long as we keep a hybrid approach to both, we can really get the best of both worlds. I see Joy of UI here. How's it going? Along with SSR being more seamless, some sites are just static, though. Yeah, so server-side rendering is a funny, an interesting one to me because a lot of people, I guess as a recap, for those who don't know what SSR is, that stands for server-side rendering. And basically what we're doing is you're basically standing up a server that whenever users request a page from the server, it'll go ahead and build that page and then serve it to the user so that basically it it's a bit like building ahead of time, but maybe you want to customize something based on like what the user sends forward and then cache that response. And so there's actually a lot of basically like advancement in this area as far as like, do we really need like a full blown server running constantly to accept users' requests? Or can we do that like in a more like scalable way with things like serverless functions? And so I can definitely say like at Netlify there, we're working on an approach that allows you to do basically the idea of SSR, but not necessarily with like the traditional architecture of just having servers running constantly. So yeah, let's see. I mean, maybe something with architecture with Docsify is enough. Yeah, so I mean, as far as, well, actually, Thesis, if you could clarify what you mean by architecture through Docsify, I'd be kind of curious. Oh, I see. I just missed Voltron's comment here. VitePress long time ago didn't look at it at all, but now look at Vite. Yeah, I mean, VitePress is basically like VuePress and then evolved to use Vite. Honestly, for me personally as well, while VitePress certainly has and VuePress have a special place in my heart, Nux is also working on an open source documentation like sort of framework as well called Docus, and so that is something that will 100% be featured on this channel once we get basically a public beta access and I can sort of demo it around. So looking forward to see what they. Oh, I see. Plan. You and I are in sync. I see the comment there. Yeah, so I personally have a chance to play around a little bit with Docus, but haven't got like the full docs. The documentation for Docus is not quite ready for public, and I haven't had a chance to really dive into it. But from what I've seen, it looks really promising, and I'd certainly love to do a comparison eventually of like Docus against VitePress, and for people looking to like build documentation websites and have it be content first rather than like a framework first perspective. Then kind of interesting to see where that goes. Hey, how's it going? I'm gonna say Arkneka is how I'm gonna pronounce that. I see. Okay, that provides some context. So Thesis here in the comments is saying that for the Docsify architecture that he's referring to, apparently what they do is they actually go ahead and fetch and markdown files rather than like building or generating it. And I definitely think there's basically validity in that. And the fact that Docsify came up with this approach means that it works really well for them. I think basically it depends on the problem you're trying to solve. For me, especially for something like Docs, I find that it is, at least performance-wise, it seems to be better to just have those rendered out as static HTML. And that way people can just get it, download it without any sort of fetching involved. Because also to me, in some regards, like ideally you'd like your Docs to eventually become something that could be an artifact. So like download it into like, I don't know, a PWA, a PDF or that kind of thing. And so I don't know. I don't think there's necessarily in this particular case, at least generally speaking, I think there's valid reasons to use the different kinds of approaches. So that said, yeah, so Joy of UI here talking about killer feature for Docs are playgrounds. Speaking of that, I think we're actually going to take a look a little bit at the new Vue Docs site, because that is basically up and coming, and I think we're going to see some of the stuff that y'all have been talking about. So with that said, let's jump into the Docs site. So for those who are looking to contribute to the Vue Docs, basically we are in Vue.js/docs. And when I say contribute, I mean basically we're basically in like a I don't know, call it public alpha, in the sense that like you can certainly follow the next branch right here as far as what we're doing. But then I would say as far as waiting to contribute code and stuff, I'd wait a little bit until that's actually been more of a public release and we're ready for other contributions. But if you want to follow along or start getting familiar with the code base, it certainly is public for us, or for anyone who wants to take a look. So let's go ahead and let me start it up right here. So when you're working with VitePress, think of it like basically a standard Vue app in terms of like you run your yarn install, your yarn dev. And so here we go. Let's see if there we go. We have it up and running. Excellent. All right. Voltron, the new Vue doc is kind of ready. Yeah, kind of ready is the right term for it. Basically, we're still in the midst of working on content and getting it up. But as you can see here, this is the new basically framework right here. And then my new framework, I mean the new doc site. And as you can see, there's a light theme. There's a dark theme, which honestly, personally, I'm very excited about. Ooh, so Joy of UI here. This is cool. I've been a React dev for 8 years. Love sampling other flavors. That's awesome. Yeah, honestly, so for those who don't know, like my background actually is in React. I think my first real exposure to JavaScript frameworks, believe it or not, was React Native. So kind of a funny way to enter into the JavaScript framework ecosystem. But that said, let's see. Oh, it looks like a lot of people are excited. Hey, what's up, Jacob? Good to see you. Yep. So yeah, we're definitely doing some changes to the docs as far as trying to make it to kind of accommodate, right, sort of what has happened to the Vue ecosystem regarding like the fact that now, in addition to Options API, you have Composition API as well that allow for people to author things kind of in different ways, but still while using kind of this sort of the styles of what we know and love of Vue. And so you can see here that basically there's like code samples as usual. I wonder if the code REPL, if this has been added yet. I don't think it has. No, I think this is still... Okay, so... Actually, let me make sure this is public first before I show... I think this is already public. Yes, it is. Perfect. Okay. So, All right, let me get a drink real quick. Okay, sorry about that. So, for those who didn't know, basically, one of the things Evan built recently is an actual REPL for single file component compilation. And so we can see here is that it allows you to basically have like this sort of live playground for Vue 3. And I believe one of the examples here, if I do fsc vuejs.org, here is an example of it. So you can see that on the left, we have our Vue 3 stuff. So I can go... let's see, let me do a button. Actually, I forgot there's no emit in this. So @click update message, and then I could just be like const update message is a function, and in this function we're going to say message.value equals hello Twitch. And so now if we click on this, hello, look at that, everything changed. And so this is something that's pretty exciting. So we'll be bringing this, I believe, into the Vue Docs to allow people to sort of get more of a hands-on approach. We have been doing that already with the vuejs.org site, actually, with some of it. So if you can see, let's see, can I do declarative rendering? Let's see, I just need to figure out where the code pens are. Maybe they're in props. I don't remember where I put them, where they're put. But anyways, so inside the Vue Docs, at certain points, there are the ability, in addition to the code examples, we're using CodePen as well, but it looks like the SFC might be something we're doing more for compilation and that kind of stuff. So this will be pretty neat. Yeah, so, Joy of UI here. So basically, yes, the idea of having this in the docs so that people can see live code examples and actually demo it, that is something that is basically being worked on for the docs. So this is pretty exciting. And yeah, okay. So as we can see here, we got a lot going on. And so Evan's done some pretty great work here. And again, this is still a work in progress. I can't state that enough. So the stuff you see in here has definitely not finished, but something that's being worked on. And so today, in conjunction with the discussion about VitePress and that kind of stuff, I basically wanted to go ahead and basically do some live coding because I still need to build some of the pages for this. So for example, as you can see, our team page right here is totally blank. And so what we want to do is be able to migrate that and figure out how we want to do that. So I figured let's go ahead and do some coding. So again, though, as you have questions, don't hesitate to drop that in the chat and we'll go from there. So let's bump this over 1/3, my usual sort of setup at this point. So I have over here, let me open up the docs. And so let's kind of take a look at what you kind of get with a VitePress site. So you have your usual source directory here. And inside of the source directory here, everything within it is basically minus the .vitepress folder. These are all markdown files. And so as you'll see here, if we go to, what's a good example? Let's go to, let's go to API reference. So if I go to API, go to index.md, we'll see some pretty interesting stuff actually. So first of all, like all Markdown files, we can have a front matter piece that actually defines certain characteristics. So in this case, you'll see that we're defining it that there's no sidebar, that the page is true, which basically affects certain conditionals that exist within the theming that ingest the Markdown files. But then on top of that, what you end up getting is the ability to actually also add a script block. This is new, particularly to VitePress because of how the compilation goes, in that you can actually add a script block inside of your Markdown file that will actually compile out and do the correct thing for later on. So we can see here that this script stuff is done to basically manage like the app process here, like the filter, so that you see when I type mount, it'll go ahead and filter down everything. And so here we go. That's basically what's happening inside of here. So Evan wrote this piece. And basically after that, you can see that like most Markdown files, you can still take an actual, like can take in raw HTML. So in this regard, because this is like data that we're trying to interact with and filter, we're actually able to basically write standard Vue inside of Markdown and have that still render correctly while still respecting basically the rest of the site. And so this is really nice because it basically feels, if you look at it, it feels a lot like a single file component. At the same time, though, for something more standard, right? So if we're looking at something like the home page, I believe. Let me see if the home page is a good example of this. So let me go ahead and open up. So the home page here, as you would expect, is at the root directory. So we would expect that to be at the index right here. And the index here, you can see this here also follows some HTML because we have to do some special styling. But then for something like guide, however, so if we go into docs and go into guide, this is where you're going to see something a bit more of what you would expect. So as we can see here, we can see our configuration up top with front matter things. But then on top of that, when we go down, this now looks like just straight Markdown. And in fact, if I could flip the order, I probably would have started with this. And you can see here that it's very standard, right? We have our heading 1 here with introduction. Heading 2, and then along with that we have our code blocks in here, and this is great, right? Because what we ultimately get is the ability to document, like focus on content rather than markup and that kind of stuff, and it gets rendered out into this beautiful thing on the right hand side. And that's what I think is really nice about these sort of documentation frameworks. And they're like I think Docusaurus is the most popular one in React, I want to say, or I'll just say one of the popular ones because I've seen that in a lot of projects. And so I love the fact that people are looking for ways to find people to focus on documenting rather than getting caught up in rabbit holes as far as figuring out like, well, I should build this for my documentation site and then this and this. And when in fact, I think we can all agree most documentation sites require like a good 80% of the footprint is roughly the same as far as the kind of support you need, right? Especially for development docs, we need like code snippets, we need ideally some sort of REPL and things like that make it basically a lot easier for users to navigate. And oh, I see Fultron in the comments here. Reref. Yep, that's let's see. The question in here is, what is reref? All right. Woo. All right, reref. Let's take a look at where Evan is using that. I believe. Actually, that's kind of funny. This might actually be a typo. Reref. Yikes. Something is caught in my throat. Okay, so it looks like reref is not a thing. Probably meant to do ref. So, woo. Okay. Am I good? Oh, okay, much better. My voice is much clearer. Sorry about that. Okay, so question here from Joy of UI. Will this support TypeScript? Yeah, so because it's built on Vue 3, and especially with some of the sort of advancements that I've seen in the Vue codebase, not only I have no reason to believe that, one, this VitePress will support TypeScript because Vue 3 is written entirely in TypeScript from the ground up. But more importantly, one of the cool things that sort of the advent as far as like as Vue pushes forward is being able to include TypeScript inside of your templates, which again, not everyone's cup of tea, but I would argue, or I would make the case and remind everyone that TypeScript is totally optional in Vue. But this does mean that for those who want to really buy into the TypeScript ecosystem and want to like type things in their templates so that, you know, the right thing is being rendered all the time, that kind of stuff is coming down the pipeline. So that's super exciting. Yeah. So as far as I'm aware, Joy of UI, there's nothing. I don't have any reason to believe that TypeScript won't be supported within this, especially seeing has all the advancements of Vue 3, especially like the frame of the script setup. This is a 3.2 thing. It's basically being injected into the VitePress as far as what's powering it. So yeah, I think TypeScript will be fully supported within this. So great question. Yeah, I think Voltron's right. I think he just meant to say ref. So, which is kind of funny because you would think that the compiler would have errored out on in that regard. So I'm kind of curious what some of this syntax stuff is. I'll have to ask him at some point. But anyhow, so we've kind of explored like the basics of what you get with with VitePress. And so if we come in here, for example, and just make a change. So let's say once again, here's a middle counter example with more details, and we save. So you can see, actually, I didn't even see that change. As I was typing, basically, and let's see, and more details, save. Yeah, like that change was instantaneous. Like when I hit Command S, by the time my eyes shifted over, it already changed. So that goes to show you some of the performance of using things like Vite for helping to make things render super, super fast. And for those of you using React, there's definitely a whole contingency of React being built on Vite as well. So please be sure to check out that ecosystem. One of the things that excites me most about Vite, honestly, is seeing the frameworks kind of come together and figuring out how to help each other kind of make their respective frameworks better. So it's basically nice to see everyone collaborate. Yeah, Joy of UI, I agree. Vite is boss. I am very excited about Vite for sure. Okay, so with that said, I think I restored everything. Yeah, see thesis here, React plus Vite is awesome. I just think it's just exciting for me to see all the frameworks start to like be like, yes, we agree that this is something we can all put our weight behind and help one another out, and it's so great. Oh, okay, here we have a question from Fultron. Let me go ahead and go back actually to, I think it was the API index. All right. So the question here from Fultron here is, I know Evan is really attached to setup, but in a sense right now it's kind of look what Angular did wrong when upgrading to new and more new ways of doing this. I hope it not happen the same way for Vue, and we will consolidate the base of Vue 3. Okay, so one of the things that I think will continue to be a discussion, I think, a lot for Vue going forward, because as we have this sort of separation of like options API and composition API. So just as I know that some of you might be new to Vue. So let me go ahead and actually, let me open up the team page actually. That's what I should do because this will be the easiest sandbox since it's blank anyways. So let me go ahead and go over to here, about team. All right, let me make sure this works. This is my update, save, boom. Okay, great. So the question being discussed here is around the idea of what do we do about the fact that there are two different ways to write Vue? So to be clear real quick, basically when we're in here, so I wonder, actually this is the first time I've actually used it like this. We'll see if this works. Data, and then I'll just do current count 10 real quick. Count, current count, like that. Save. That didn't do anything. Okay, so maybe it wants the script set up. Const current count equals 10. Oh wait, did that do something earlier? No, that did not. Okay, so basically, yeah. So to Joy of UI's question, and for those of you who might be a little bit new to Vue, know that basically when writing Vue, there are now, I mean, there always has been, but there are different ways of approaching it. So this right here is what we would consider like the options API, where there are very clear defined properties that define where things go in Vue. It was very powerful, and I think one of the reasons why a lot of people love Vue. But then as sort of people began trying to do different patterns and wanted more flexibility, options API became a little bit limited for those who wanted kind of more of a sort of like, I want to architect my own basically setup. And so as a result, there was something called the composition API, which for those coming from React is probably most reminiscent of React hooks, where rather than sort of dealing with sort of like an object that concerns various options, basically you have the ability to what looks like basically write standard JavaScript, and then kind of Vue takes it from there. So in this case, it might be, once again, it would be like, so here we have a variable called current count that we want to update. And so the way we would do that is we would go ahead and say, oh, we want to make it reactive, for example, right? So we'll make it a reactive reference. So this would be like import ref from Vue. And then we would just wrap it in this to indicate that this thing is a reactive reference. And that way that when we have like a button here that clicks it and does current count plus plus increment like this. What did it not like? Oh, that's weird. I totally expected this to be valid JavaScript. Increment here. The button is there. Oh, it didn't like that increment? All right, that's fine with me. I can just do this real quick just to make sure I'm doing it right. Plus plus, and then at click to increment. It doesn't like the button tag. What did I do incorrectly? This is interesting. Why is it compiling wrong? It doesn't like the button tag that I ended with. If I just do a div, does it make a difference? Okay, so for whatever reason, button is erroring out. So cannot read line of undefined. Okay, anyways, but the point is made here that when I click on this, it actually updates a reactive reference. So this is probably code that I think React developers are probably most familiar with. And so, hey, what's up, Biggie Cheese? We've been going over basically introduction of VitePress and that kind of stuff. So a recording will be posted of this later. So if you want to catch up on that, no worries. But right now we're talking about, so Fultron had a great question here regarding the various ways of writing Vue at this point. And so class syntax for writing Vue components, I would say, is there's like an official plugin and stuff for it, but I would say this is not built into the core package of Vue. So I'm gonna just kind of set that aside, because I say class components are more of like, if you really want to do the class syntax for JavaScript and like that, then you can do, there's a whole sort of support ecosystem for that. But as far as the core Vue base, yes, there's basically currently now two approaches with options versus composition. And I think this is one of those things where as the community uses it, we'll basically have to take feedback, because one of the challenges here, I think, with all frameworks is that when you want to go ahead and start to innovate, a lot of the things that people loved about the original style of the framework become, in some ways, a hindrance to making progress. And I think this is why we found, historically speaking, developers have gone from framework to framework to framework, because they'll sort of, the thing that made them popular becomes the thing kind of that holds them back. And then as someone else comes up with like the new thing, because they stick with the old way, like eventually people just kind of naturally move on. And so granted, to Fultron's point, we don't want to pull an Angular in that regard, because for those who don't know, Angular version 1 basically was this API that actually had a lot of popularity. People really loved it. But then for Angular 2, basically everything broke, a lot of things switched. And basically people needed to do like a whole major version upgrade. It was not a simple like npm install like Angular 2 and then you can like just do some minor upgrades. Like from what I understand from people who've done the migration, it was basically like migrating to a new framework, even though you were going from Angular 1 to Angular 2. And so Vue, we have worked really hard not to give people that, to give them that experience, right? That's why, for example, even if we're trying to sort of experiment with new ideologies and figure out whether or not this makes the most sense for the ecosystem moving forward, for example, this is why Vue basically we have the options API still in Vue 3, right? We did this major upgrade. We have a lot of things that worked really well with it. And then in addition, we're looking to experiment with new techniques regarding the composition API to allow to see how well does that fit into the existing ecosystem, and more importantly, like, can this actually help people move forward? Because for those of us who have like played with Svelte, for example, Svelte is gaining a lot of popularity. And I think one of the reasons for that is because it has like let's bring it up. So Svelte definitely has this sort of like, let's see, let's give me an example. Here we go, right? So let's run through this real quick. So Svelte here, so this should look actually pretty familiar. So if we come in here, script, right? This is a script block. And then we say let name equal hello. And then we write down name here. You can see this actually fairly reminiscent of what we know with Vue. And so as we go through and do things like basically people are liking some of basically the things that Svelte is doing for the ecosystem and the kind of ideas it's playing with. And so the question is, how can we as a framework also learn and advance forward while still having this? And so I don't know, Voltron, it's a tricky question. I think there will be lots of discussion going forward regarding what we're going to do. And more, and I say we, but honestly, I think the community will end up having a big say in this, especially because, in my opinion, one of the reasons we haven't seen as much adoption of Vue 3 is because a lot of people are waiting for those sort of dependencies like Nuxt and Vuetify to have the sort of the enterprise support. And once they have that, I think we're going to see more people moving over because at least in the Vue 2 ecosystems, I know one of the things that used to hold people back is that they had bought into the TypeScript train and they're like, I'm ready to move over. And so with Vue 3 having that TypeScript support built from the ground up, and then in combination with all these different techniques, I think we're going to see a really interesting time of experimentation and exploration from the community. So we will really see. Yeah, Feltron here saying that they have really great docs. Yeah, so again, this is why like the new doc site is being experimented with, and we're trying to see how we can push forward in a way that like helps us move forward as a community and helps everyone in that regard. So with that, let's go ahead and let's do some building because I need to build this team page. So I figure why not? All right, so let me make sure I bring up the right design as far as what I'm basing it off of. View, sorry, I'm gonna bring it up 1 second. Pages. Okay, here we go. All right. So this is kind of what we're looking for the initial scaffold of the basically team members and figuring out like how we're going to show that. Let's see. Oh, actually, before I move on, looks like someone has a question. My point is here not to have too many different ways of doing things. Right now, we have multiple VS Code plugins, which I know we're pushing for Volar. I know that, yeah, I think... so to Fultron's point here, I would say the fragmentation in the ecosystem is, I mean, I would say at least for me personally is a concern. And this is one of the hard things about like being, I would say, stagnant and always doing sort of the same thing versus like introducing new techniques. And I imagine at the end of this, honestly, I imagine there'll be lessons learned on better ways we could have done to integrate those things or to maybe like ramp up users so that it wasn't such a drastic change, because I know some people are feeling like it's a big shift. So again, we're doing our best as we can as an open source library. But that said, I do think we will kind of, I would like to see, I would tell you at least from my end, I'd love to see us sort of centralize more and more on sort of singular, like for example, like you mentioned, plugins in that regard, so that people have one thing they install and having that be more of a go-to so that the community can still feel cohesive in that regard. No. Honestly, this, I mean, let's be honest. If I really wanted to focus, I would call this a co-working session. I would just not respond to chat and throw up a timer. Like I could totally done that. Honestly, having these Twitch streams and having y'all ask questions, honestly, I really appreciate it. So not a problem at all. I just always like to have a topic and something to work on in case something changes. Yes, exactly, Joy of UI. This is the platform, right? Otherwise, I think I would just, I don't know. I would just do things very differently if I had no intention of it interacting with you all. So this is great. Okay, so let's just start with content. So the nice thing about, actually, I am going to probably need that script block, so I'm just going to leave it alone for this part later. But let's go ahead and take over some of this Actually, I realized this is from here. Yeah, that's fine. So if I drop this here, and then I need this link, and then we're gonna have different headings, it looks like, for core team members and the expectations there. Then we'll have a list of things. I'll deal with that later. And then we'll have the team members here who have all this stuff. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Bum, bum, bum. And then that's that. Okay, so if we save, we should already see that. Here we go. So actually, let me close this stuff up so we don't have to jump around too much. Great. Okay, so we're already seeing, which is really nice, that we have the ability to, we already see the meet the team page. This is already looking pretty darn good. Oh, okay. Question here from Joy. Oh, footer in your, oh no. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh my gosh, how long has that been going on? Plan, I appreciate that. Yes, this is what it's supposed to look like. My apologies to the recording later on. Well, at least, I mean, the footer at least is not the dynamic part, so at least it wasn't the other way around. So Joy of UI here, actually with a question here regarding how many attributes are there in Vue? Joy of UI the whole time. Honestly, I thought I checked that. Okay, it's all good. So in terms of your question regarding the attribute, so when you're thinking about the basically, Joy of UI, think of the as like the on click, like the on prefix in React. On click, on mouse up, on key up. It basically allows us to define an event on the basically element and then assign it to basically the JavaScript expression. And so in that regard, it has as many events as you would expect in the standard JavaScript API. There's nothing special really about the event, other than the fact that like if you define custom events, then you can listen to like on custom event and then do the thing. But as far as like what's built into Vue, it's basically whatever you're used to in the JavaScript events. Basically, you can do the and then you can do the mouse up, key down, key up, etc., and it'll work as you expect. So, Plan just noticed. Okay, well. I appreciate you calling that out. I will watch for that in the future. I'm surprised it got shifted though. Like, it's funny, it went like down a little bit. I must have accidentally clicked something. But anyways. All right, so here we have a couple of things now. Now we got to play around with the part that I particularly like about VitePress, which is that, yes, updating Markdown files is cool, and it's nice to be able to add your content like that, but really what I want is the ability to have components in my Markdown files. So that's when things get a little bit more interesting. Otherwise, for example, in this particular page, we'd have to go down and be like, well, let's wrap a div with like class, team card. And then what would we do? We'd be like, well, this is probably an H3, for example. And then we'd be like, this is Evan. And then here we'd have like the subtitle, creator at Vue.js. And then what? So then like a UL. So as you can see, like this would be pretty ugly to deal with if we're like manually repeating this like down, 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 right? Like that's a lot. And so instead, what we're going to do is we're going to work with a component. So let me just save, make sure this worked. See Evan here. Great. So what we're going to do now is let's go ahead and open this. Actually, let me go ahead and make this 1/3. There you go. Now it's the right size. Let's see. So inside of here, inside of VitePress, I believe it's going to be in here, but let's double check the VitePress docs real quick. Oh, that's not what I wanted. VitePress.vue.js.org. And getting started. Configure asset handling Markdown using Vue in Markdown. The components will live in the components folder. Okay, excellent. This is what I thought it was. Let's see, Joy of UI. Just thinking what you have to learn. That was my criticism of Angular with all the extra syntax. Yeah, so Joy of UI, I think this is actually a decent deviation. So, or as far as like a tangent for the topic. So as far as Vue goes, one of the things I've always found, what I really liked about Vue is that it takes what people already know about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and kind of lets you use it the way you are naturally without sort of changing the syntax. So, and also I can, so as far as context as well for recording in case the chat doesn't show up, is that, Joy of UI here says that I've always been partial to React. And because it's closer to JS. And I think a lot of people do feel that way. And honestly, one of the things I did love about React, or do love about React, is that when you use React, because it is all JavaScript, you get a lot better at the JavaScript really quickly. But this also, I would say, in the meantime, means that some people who go straight into React who don't have as strong fundamentals with HTML or CSS, as well, kind of have weaker foundations. And I think Vue tries to split the difference with that in terms of like, the extra syntax that we're talking about is really just a way to layer on existing HTML. And so in that regard, this is one of the reasons why, for example, the biggest criticisms I've seen of Vue compared to React is that when we're doing things like dynamically binding an attribute. So an example of here would be, let's go ahead and let me go ahead and let's do an inspect real quick. And let's, for this core team, like heading, for example, right? If you wanted to bind, like, let's say a specific attribute, and you wanted to say, I don't know, let's say we'll bind a, let's say a data attribute called like custom, and we'll just call it Twitch, for example, actually. So normally when you write your HTML, right, it'll be custom data Twitch like this. And then we'll see that Twitch actually does show, once I get it, Twitch shows, oh, div class team card. Wait, on team card. Where is my team card? Here we go. Data custom Twitch. Okay, down here. So the Twitch, let me bump this up a little bit. Twitch here does show up. Now, what if you wanted to dynamically bind that, right? In React, one of the nice things about JSX is that I would say like you would basically make this. So we would basically create a reactive element here. So let's say const, so let me import ref real quick to make this reactive because we're going to be able to switch it. And then we'll say, I'll just say custom prop equals const custom prop equals, and then I'm just gonna say Twitter now, just to switch it up. So then now that we have this string here, basically, typically you would say custom prop here, and then React would render it, right? But here's the thing though, the curly brace is not standard HTML. That is JSX, you're in JSX world. So what Vue does, and the reason why the syntax was chosen this way is that if you want to layer on Vue on top of an existing page, this is not valid syntax. It won't work because you need a compiler that can actually work with all that. So it's why it's introduced like things like the vbind syntax to say that, hey, when you're looking at something in the DOM, basically take what's inside of the expression, which by the expression, I mean the quotes. And then I'll tell you this right now. They threw me off for a second, and it throws a lot of React developers off because they think this means string. But remember, we're in HTML world. So this is valid HTML, but we're telling that by using the vbind prefix, we're saying, hey, inside of here, this is what's dynamic. And so as a result, when we save this, we'll see that the data custom has become Twitter. And then on top of that, then vbind here then becomes basically shortened down to the prefix of the colon, so that makes it easier to basically indicate that this is still something that Vue is going to control and help make a JavaScript expression, and then otherwise it's all the same. And I think this small demo here to me is like the difference in the approach in that regard for the framework is it really doesn't try to introduce new syntax in that regard. It actually tries to follow the spec as much as humanly possible, and then layer just enough to give you what you need without having you escape everything. And so, So Joy of UI, here's a question here. Vue must need a compiler for mutating refs leading to a digest cycle though, right? No, in this case, I don't. So in this particular case, we're in VitePress land, so I can't say specifically to this instance, but if you're just dropping in Vue as a CDN, for example, and layering it on top of an existing page, it really doesn't, there's no compiler. It just can read the DOM correctly and then update it as it's, like, basically knows where all the attributes are and will watch those things specifically. So I would definitely recommend for those kind of interested in learning more about sort of what layering on is possible. Recently, Evan released something called Vue, Petite Vue. And I think I did a stream on this a little while ago, but basically, as you can see here, it allows you to import a CDN package for Petite Vue, and then anywhere on your HTML page, as long as it's valid HTML, you can basically start to append things like telling it that within this div, you have a scope where you have this reactive property called count, and then you can increment it and make it reactive. And again, Petite Vue, I think, is like significantly smaller than jQuery. And so it's pretty incredible. Oh, joy of UI. Okay, your question regarding let count ref 10 work as written. Let me jump that over. So in this particular case with the like import script setup stuff, this would require, I believe this would require an actual compiler. So that's what I was saying in this particular implementation with like the script setup, this I believe does require the compiler. But in general, as far as Vue's philosophy goes, so again, if we look at Petite Vue, the goal here is to keep it as simple as possible, so that when you're inside of your Vue app on like something that's already been built, then you'll define everything in here. Granted, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Evan eventually comes out with a way for us to write sort of more of that standard syntax. But this is one way that it can be handled on. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that, Joy of You. I didn't quite understand the question at the time. Cool. So anyhow, hope that was helpful. But again, I think what I love about the frameworks as a whole, again, I really try not to see the frameworks as competition to one another, because if we think about it, the frameworks were created as an answer to a specific set of problems that people have or had. And then as a result, I think it's important to learn to see what trade-offs people made in those things. And then as a result, what benefits came as a result, or what drawbacks came as a result of those decisions. So I think as long as we can do that, I think we can all move together as the web community and move forward. Okay, so components here. I want to do some components. So inside of source in VitePress, I'm actually going to create them in here. And we're going to create a new one. And this time I'm going to call this teamcard.vue. This will be a single file component. So again, let's go ahead and copy this little snippet over real quick. All right. So if all works out well, inside, let me see. Inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So Evan should disappear. Evan does disappear. And then what we're going to do is we're going to import the component we want to use. So in this case, we're going to import teamcard from VitePress /components/teamcard. Whoop. Okay. That should do it. And then now, if this works as I think it will, and we just call teamcard here and save. Excellent. Evan does show up. So this is exciting now, because what we end up getting is the ability to componentize our documentation into the normal components that we're used to using. And so since we're in here, I know that one of the questions here, we actually can do a lang of TypeScript and actually do all this stuff. So I imagine you can do the same thing in the markdown files. Just haven't tried it yet. Okay, so now that I have this, I want to go ahead and honestly, one of the patterns I saw Evan do actually is that inside of the API folder, I think he kept all the data in an index.json. Yeah. And so inside of this index.json, I believe that was just imported API index from index.json. Yep. Okay. So following that same pattern, then, what I would again, to keep this consistent for the team, when we're in the about section, we should have, I'm going to say team data.json. I'll just say team.json. That's what I'll do. And then here, we're just going to head and do an array. And again, I'm not going to do all the boring stuff here just yet. But let's just do a quick architecture. So name Evan. Can we do that? There you go. Name Evan U. So this will be the basically the headline here. So creator at Vue.js. And then we will have, honestly, let's just stop there. And then I'm just going to do a couple more. So I'll just do mine real quick. Ben Hong, headline. I honestly forgot what my headline was, but I'll just do my title, staff, developer, experienced engineer at Netlify. Great. Okay. So now that we have this JSON ready to go, we should be able to take in various props. So I think for these props, we're going to talk about the name. This will be type string. This will be required. And we'll also have the title, which will also be type string. Honestly, though, maybe I'm going to simplify the prop so that we just pass the whole profile in at once. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a profile, and I'm going to type. So I won't do the TypeScript aspect of this just yet, but there we go. This at least tells me that we get a profile. And so in here, what we're going to do is we're going to import the data that we wanted. So import team data from, oh, actually it's in this, so team.json. That should expose it here. So what I want to do though, real quick, let me just make sure what it, that's not what I wanted. We do the API introduction. I want to make sure I follow the right pattern here. Import API index from JSON, then API index is used to map filter component. Okay, well, in that case, then from here, that means the data is already exposed the way I thought it would. And what we can do here is we can loop through all of the elements. And so using the v-4 directive. And then in here we have for every member in team data. And then for the key, I'm just going to do the member.name. We'll give it an actual proper ID in the future. Then we'll pass in the profile as the actual member. And if we save that, okay, check this out. We now have two different components being rendered, which is great. Because, and if you're wondering why is it the same, it's because, well, it's still static in here. So now we can come in here and say, well, this is going to be profile.name. And this is going to be profile.title. So if we save that, excellent. The only thing is kind of weird. Why did the team JSON... Oh, headline. I'm silly. Should be this. There we go. Much better. Excellent. So we have our team card. We are looping through things. Let me see. The key profile. I would prettier. Don't reset it. Okay, excellent. This looks much better to me. V4. I see Jacob here in the chat with the magic. I know, it's so nice, isn't it? I mean, again, we're not gonna sit through all this, but let's see. Oh my gosh, Figma, how do I hide stuff? How do I hide your sidebar? Dang it. All right, let's see. Oh, tainted should be .title. So I naturally thought title. Honestly, I am thinking about that, but I want to make sure. Let's see, head developer, title. Yeah, I think it is going to be title. I am going to do title. Okay, so real quick, let's switch that up real quick. That'll be title, and then when we're inside of the team card, it'll be title. There we go. Switch that. Only other things that, what else do we have here? We have the ability to, let me see, let me bump this over 50%. All right, the various projects that we're particularly focused on. So in that regard, I think it'll be easier just to be like projects, which is an array. And then the array here will probably take a label with the URL is my guess is how we're going to do that. And then we have a location with, okay, so location here, this will be, so we have the label that is actually going to show up. So in this, so we have, for example, New Jersey, like that. But then I think we had other things like for like map location wise. But anyways, I'll keep it an object so that we can expand on that. But that'll be the label that shows up. Then we clearly have languages because people can have more than one. And then this, at this point, I think would make the most sense to just have this be... Yeah, so this is where, honestly, I think I might eventually create types for this. That becomes nice and easy. There's that. And then for people who want to share their website, that's possible. And that, I don't think we're actually gonna... Yeah, maybe we can. We'll just say this will also have a label. So if for me, for example, it's benkozen.io, but the URL might be something formal then, like this. So I think that is pretty clean. But again, let's say for this, we're just gonna have Chinese English. And oh no, my keyboard flipping out. I've been having this problem with this keyboard, and it's making me very sad because I really like this keyboard, but alas, oh, my keyboard. Why is my keyboard messing? Okay, there we go. It makes me so sad that this keyboard is not kind of glitches out like that sometime. So we have English here. Oh, talented. I am so sorry. I just saw that. It's an L, not an I. I don't know why I read that as an I. So, so my apologies, talented. Okay, so here we have the website. We have this, and then we have social media. I'll just call it social, actually. And then social here, then right. So this is where, no, this one needs to be specific. Because we only want to support certain sort of social profiles. There's no point in making it like a broad array because we need to support certain icons. So in this regard, we could say if people have a Twitter, then I guess we can just put their handle, although I realize I'm doing this for Evan, but it's fine. We're just GitHub, for example, like that. And we, as long as we have the username, we can derive everything else because everything is the same in that regard. So I think at least as far as requirements go initially, that's what I'm seeing. As far as the Vue.js org team, GitHub, Twitter, language. Yep, we got rid of that. Yep. GitHub, Twitter. Okay, so it's either GitHub or Twitter basically at this point, which is great. That makes life a bit simpler. Okay, so now that we have all this stuff, this is good. Then this means that let's go ahead and you know what the hey, let's go ahead and implement some of this. Let's see how we're doing on time. We're still doing pretty good. All right, comment in here now. If we're in the team card profile object, let's map this out a little bit here. Oh, interesting. People might want to link their company. I see. I could see how that people might want that. So if that's the case, then your title is 1 bit, and then like creator, and then your company here is a 2nd bit. The only thing I'm a little concerned about doing it this way, right? So if we assume they're always paired together, it is a little bit, no, actually this should be fine. I'll show you why that is in a second. So, okay, let's copy all this, paste that down here. Honestly, this should have been my profile anyways, Ben Hong, so this will be staff, developer, experience engineer. Then here, the company I'm at right now is Netlify, and then that's that. So here, real quick, Vue.js project location. So my location here will be Washington. I can't type. DC, great. Okay, so mine is pretty much done. Chinese, English. The main difference is, at least for Evans, where is the team page? Vuejs.org, team. All right, so here we go. So we have copy link address. So the GitHub here is this. Twitter is not the same. So that's that. That's that. Then the website here is this. And then we're just going to have the label. It's possible that this could be a computer property because I'm already seeing a pattern. Like if we're just going to always chop off the HTTPS, we could literally just make like that part the display so it's easier. But anyways, we will derive that when we have the data to support that. For now, I think label and URL are kind of a simple separation. Okay, so that's good. Now let's go ahead and mark this up a bit. So let me just print out the profile to the page, and then let's start scaffolding some stuff out. Okay, let's see. Let me bump this over to 50% now, actually, and then move the sidebar. Great. This should now be readable to everyone. Bump up, bump up, bum, 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 bum. Okay, so we have the creator. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. So creator at profile.company. I think this is probably the cleanest way to do this because not everyone has a company. So as a result, I would argue then that this span has a if conditional on whether or not profile.company exists. Because if it doesn't, then we shouldn't be displaying it. So in this particular case, it should show up for both, but just for demonstration purposes, we're going to go ahead and make view empty. And if that's the case, it just says creator. Okay, so that's good. That's what we want. So that's a nice if right there, just to let us conditionally display the company as it makes sense. So that way people can just write consultant and not like consultant at agency, because maybe they don't have an agency. What else do we have? Could wrap profile in a pre-tag for readability. Oh, look at that. I think plan with a clutch suggestion. Oh, bravo. I don't know why I never thought to do that, but man, this is the hack. Oh man, plan. I'm totally shouting you out, I think, on Twitter later for that suggestion, because I'm not gonna lie, every time I print out raw data, I just straight for the P tag, and for an extra 2 letters, I get this. Amazing. Why did I not think of this sooner? Love the tip. Oh man, MVP goes to plan for the tip of the day. All right, so let's keep going. Creator, company, projects, we'll deal with that later. Location. All right, great. So again, it's probably a little bit more accurate to say that this is an address. I don't know. I'm debating like whether we'll actually be doing any Google Maps stuff with that. But in the meantime, let's just make this technically an address to be semantically correct. What's up, Cassidy? All right, so we have locations. Oh, Cass, check this out. You know, this is the one thing I always thought was a little bit weird about React, I will say. Because in case you didn't know, Cassie, we've been talking about React, Vue, and stuff. And so Drove UI, if you're still here, one of the things I love about when I'm working with Vue is that when I want to see like the raw data of something, it is as simple as just like printing it out like two. So if I'm just like profile like this, I can just see the JSON. But if I remember correctly, in React, we have to actually JSON that stringify the data property. And so I love that this kind of thing is abstracted away, because it's like, you know what I want to do. I just want to print the data property. It's a JSON object. I know you got to stringify it, but please take care of it for me. But check this out, Cassidy. If I switch this out to pre, courtesy of plan in the chat, it's so pretty. Anyways, I'm super stoked about this. All right, so we have our address here. We have our location for each person. Oh, I totally forgot the profile image. That is totally gonna be a thing. Womp womp. So I need to figure that out. Languages. Okay, that is just gonna be a UILI v4. Yeah. So language in languages. Oh, I don't like this. Okay, so I have a pretty strong opinion here. Where language list, I'm just gonna do it. I like, instead of things being languages, I like, if it's gonna be an array of something, I like to actually call it a language list. It's very explicit regarding the plurality, that there's gonna be typically more than one item. And I know it is a few more characters, but the thing I wanted to save is like, I feel like there's a lot of typos, and maybe it's just me, that are made between like just having one off. Like we're talking about off by one errors. This is an off by one letter error that I think could be avoided with this naming convention. And so, what's up, Phil? So I just, again, I know that typically in programming, we optimize for like the lowest number of characters, but I think clarity is almost more important than number of characters, because if no one understands what's going on, or we have random errors like that, to me it's not worth the character saved. And so rather than language in languages, which is again, off by one error so many times. And I think about all the number of databases where they're like tasks in task, like it's so easy to get it wrong. Anyways, so anyway, if it's an array, I like to call it a list. So a language in language list. and then I can just render out the language. And so with that, although what did I do wrong? Language and language lists. It did not render. Oh, profile.language list. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. Language list. Perfect. That's good. Then we, of course, have a website where we will bind the profile.website.url, profile.website.label here. There we go. Patreon Evan Yu. Excellent. And finally, we have our social here. So we'll say, once again, I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Okay, so in this case, yeah, so social is not, I didn't say socials, so I'm going to leave it as is. And I'm going to say account in social. That makes it very clear. And then account, oh, right, there's the key and the value. So I don't know why, but I always end up flipping this. So we have, I believe it's value first. So it'll be handle and then the platform, I believe. And so to make sure I got this right, this is it's gonna yell at me because it's gonna say I have multiple keys, but hang on a sec. If handle is correct, then I should see in profile.social. Okay, great. The handle is correct. The handle. Yep, value goes first, then the key. So that means that we can then say, for the key of every element, we know this will be unique, that if we just append the platform with the handle, this will make sure that every username, or basically every element, is unique. So that does that well. Oop, I can't spell. Platform. And then here we have we have our handle already, but we need the URL. So in this particular case, what we can at least start with, I don't have all the icons ready yet, but if we do platform like this with the handle, that looks already much better. Again, we'll be doing the icons, so I'm not going to worry too much about like pretty printing the platform yet. But the other thing we do need to do though is that this does need to be linkable. So this will be a link, and this link will wrap this, and then all we need to do to combine that is to say, I believe they're both the same. So to check this, if it's just github.bencodezen, that should work. And then, yep, and then twitter.com/bencodezen. Yeah, that worked. I did a typo, but therefore we can say that HTTP, and then we can literally just put the platform in the middle. Platform.com/handle. That's it. I do not like that prettify. All right, this is better. All right, so if we look at this now, excellent. Twitter. So if we go ahead and open this in a new link, we should see Evan's profile. Excellent. And then if we open the GitHub, that is his profile. Excellent. Okay. So good, we have most of the core pieces now when it comes to this profile. The only thing left is really the image. And so what we're gonna do here then is I think we're just gonna have a profile ideally, if we're gonna do team JSON, the structure of the data should have the name, So name, fill it out. Then at the end, let's do the profile.pic image profile. Yes, we're gonna do pic. I think pic is good enough. And then this will just be the source, I believe. And then you can have an alt that you defined. Optionally, I think that'll be good. So then here, pick source alt. Great. Okay, so now that we save that, so now theoretically if, all right, let's go to my Twitter profile. And then we're going to grab this photo here, save the image as, we're going to go to projects. We're going to go down to Vue Docs. All right, this is where I don't totally remember. I think it needs to go in static actually, although yes, otherwise the data would be kind of weird. All right, so let me just drop it in. Can I just drop it in the folder like here? There we go. Drop it. I'll just do ben dot, or just say ben.jpg. Excellent. Okay, so if this works as well, actually, let me double check something real quick. So if we're looking at the VitePress docs, we can see that asset handling, how do we do the image? Process by Vite, you should, by relative URLs, you can static assets refer to plain public files that are not directly referenced in your markdown or components. Okay, so what I'm hearing then is that everything is relative. Okay, if that's the case, then what this means to me is that inside of our source, we have all these page directories, which is fine. But then it seems like really we should have a folder here. Oh, I don't want that there. I want that like at the root directory, and I want a static folder. And then inside the static, I will put the, for now I'll just do static ben. So if this works correctly, let's just see if this even works. We should see, let's see, I'm here. So if I'm just doing everything relative as the docs sort of mentions, there should be a static ben, and then that should show up. That did not show up, which is honestly kind of what I expected. So, which is kind of interesting. So, okay, let me double check something real quick. Asset handling should be, you can reference any static. Oh, no, it should be JPEG. Yeah, it is a JPEG, so that's not it. Public directory can be provided as static. Oh, well, I guess maybe they're saying it should be in the static folder. So, okay, if that's what, I guess if that's what Evan is, or at least the opinion is in this, then the theory would apply that if I move static into about, and I rename this, let's just say images, theoretically, again, I don't think this is going to work. Slash images slash, I don't think this is going to work. ben.jpg. Plan here, what's the assets folder for? That's a great question. Let me make sure this doesn't work. Good, this doesn't work. Theory is confirmed. So public. Yup. All master files should be compiled into Vue component processed by Vite. Yes. You can and should reference any access using relative URLs. You can reference static assets in your markdown files. Yeah, that's fine. Common image and font files are detected. So why wouldn't this work? It should just be like slash images like that. This would lead me to believe it won't work. Yeah, that did not work. What is he referencing here? Should be based on your working directory structure. Yeah, but I didn't use it. I used relative. So relative to the about page, which is the team here. Oh, wait, this is the team card. Oh, wait. Hold up. My theory is a little bit botched. Let me go in here real quick and drop this here. Okay, so that did not help things. I just want to make sure. Oh, that did work. Okay. Fascinating. This is going to be kind of tricky. Asset handling is always a little bit weird. I mean, okay, this makes sense, right? Like, because, okay, so let's explain what happened here. So right now, I'm currently in the markdown file of team.md. And inside of this markdown file, we can refer to relative images to like the core file. So in this particular case, you can see here that we're going to basically team relative to this path, root directory images Ben. And as a result, we can see Ben appear on the page. Now, the reason this is tricky is we're not just referencing one image. We basically need an image for every person. So, just for the sake of argument here, we're going to go ahead and grab Evan's actually. So let's go to twitter.com/UCIAN. Let's grab this one. Again, not the greatest photo, but again, this is more for demonstration purposes than anything else right now. This can be modified. So Vue.js, docs. All right, so source inside of the about, the team gets a bunch of images. And in this, we would have Evan here saved. And what we need to do, and the reason this is a little bit trickier, is we need to actually dynamically populate this path. So I'm a little skeptical at how this would really work. But it's okay. We're going to figure it out. What's the worst that'll happen? Things will break. And then if things break, we can figure out how to fix them. Okay. So the reason I made a mistake earlier is I was looking at the team card component, which lives in a totally different directory. It lives in the component's VitePress. So if we think of it this way, in some ways, the relative path is going to be totally different than what we would think. So if let's do this. If I go back, about images Ben and save, does this actually work? I think that actually worked. It did work. Very cool. Okay, so what if I... Okay, here we go. Again, let's not panic. Don't panic. I'm doing more for myself than anything else. In team JSON, now if I know that my profile... I mean, I would like to make things as easy as possible for people, because if we know the convention, then we actually don't even need this property to be defined. We just need to make sure they upload a profile picture with a specific name. And so if you're wondering why I'm thinking this aloud, it's because I'd argue that as long as we have a consistent asset naming, which should be easy to enforce, again, for a small team, there's no reason to say that like it should always be your first name, last name with a dash in between, and then .jpg. So if that's really the case, then we could say, again, to test this theory out, let's rename this to benhong.jpg. Evan would become evanU.jpg. And if this works the way I hope it will, what we should see now is if let's see, profile. Okay, so inside of this props, I'm going to do a computed property real quick for image name. And this image name will return profile.name two lowercase split via the space and then joined via that. And then we're going to add the .jpg to it. So to make sure I didn't totally botch that computation, let's do this real quick and check out the image name that would theoretically appear for each one. And did it work? Save. Refresh. I broke something. Oh, I know what I broke. I try to refer to profile without the this. So when we're in options, we need the this. And then, oh no, what did I break? Requested reading front matter. All right, hold up. Dang, I thought I had this one too. Commented out. Image name, save. Oh, I think I broke something. What did I break? Team card.view computed. Oh, what is this nonsense that got imported? Okay. Okay. Now I'm gonna uncomment stuff out. Refresh. Okay, oh, Okay, save. Okay, let's see. But computed. This should appear. Again, let's comment this out. Image name is not returning anything. That's interesting to me. What did I do wrong? Profile.name, that should be correct. Dun, dun, dun. Let's see. Plan here is saying just using the GitHub user profile image might be easier to keep up to date. Yes, that is possible. So one of the things I would think is that if you put in your GitHub username, it will default to that unless you decide to override it. Because you know some people don't always want to keep the same profile picture. So this is more of a thinking of like for allowing people to easily override. The only thing though is that why is this not working? I'm a lot of confused right now. Image name. Let's see. That did not work. Custom prop was accessed but not defined. I definitely defined custom image name right here. Oh, this is just saying it's still complaining about that. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay. It should return this dot profile. This should not even be a problem. This is very weird to me. Why is this not working? All right, let's see. Let's try this real quick. Data test. Something. Okay, is anything appearing? All right, test is appearing, but this is not. So let me drop this here. That didn't do anything. Hello. That is appearing. Okay, so it doesn't recognize this at all. But it recognized the props? That's super weird. Why would it not like this? I'm gonna have to ask about that if that's the case, really. Const profile find props. And then profile type object required true. This is probably gonna break a lot of things, my guess is. Oh, looks like that is still good. Evan, Ben, okay, that prop's still good. Then we can say const hello equals test. Once again, I'm very bewildered why the other thing didn't work. That did work, weird. Okay, so if I say image name equals a computed property, then computed here takes in a function that watches something and returns, in this case, props.profile.name. Can I just do that? And this is where my image name shows up. Yep, that is fine. So then if I do to lowercase, did not like that. All right, Evan, you, great. Split by the space, join with the dash, and then attach the JPEG to it. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so my algorithm was right as far as calculating that. I don't know why that broke though. That bothers me a little bit. Okay, but that said, this does mean now that once we have this part, theoretically, we should be able to, with this relative path set, say that here is the image name. Yep, that worked. Okay, great. That was as easy as I hoped it would be, even though I had low expectations. So in fact, I'm just going to rename this though to image source or image file name. I think that's probably the easiest, most declarative thing we can do. So that's how we get the benhong.jpg, and then we'll do the image alt, which will also be a computed property, I guess for now, and then we'll return basically props.profile.name plus. So actually, I like the template literals, so here we go. Profile picture. Okay, and then we can bind that here to the image alt. All right, so if that worked correctly, we should see now here, image alt benhong's profile, benhong's, that should be a possessive, like that. And then if we're in Evan's profile pic, we will go ahead and see Evan use profile picture. Great. Now, of course, we have here, so we've accomplished quite a bit here. A little bit odd to me here that the other thing didn't work. But that said, we got a lot done today. So I'm going to go ahead and actually, I just realized I'm not even on another branch. So we'll say the new team page, feature full data for team member. Okay, awesome. Well, let's jump over to intermission. So with that, thanks everyone for hanging out. Okay, so the question here from Plan. Options API should work in VitePress. I don't see why it wouldn't. Like, it's just Vue 3 under the hood. So it's, I don't know. I'm going to play with that around a little bit and then ping the team, because if that's really the case, that's not good. But yeah, nice to know I could at least fall back on something, but so that it wasn't completely broken. So anyhow, that's it. So that's all for today's episode of Build with Ben. So we got to take a look at VitePress. We had lots of great questions regarding sort of Vue and sort of its comparison to React and some of the differences, and why there are advantages and disadvantages to both, depending on sort of your background, what you're working with. And again, it was always just fun getting to hang out and interact with everyone. So as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on Twitter under the moniker BenCodeZen. And so as far as the rest of the schedule this week, later on Thursday, we'll have our Obsidian office hours. So for those who love to nerd out about productivity apps and want to just sit and chat about like life philosophy, that kind of thing, that's what we'll be doing, all while under the guise of using Obsidian to facilitate those thoughts and discussions. So with that said, thanks everyone for joining today.